something so satisfying and exciting about picking and eating food that you've grown yourself from a tiny little seed. I wonder, did you plant anything this year? Even if you haven't got a garden, you can plant things in little pots on windowsills, and you can get pretty good tomatoes that way as well. It tastes so good, that first tomato that you've grown yourself. This year I set myself a little challenge, and it was to grow as many different types of fruits and vegetables as I could in my little garden. So I've grown carrots, lettuce, leeks, potatoes, courgettes, peas, more lettuce, spinach beet, the bugs have enjoyed that too, apples, rhubarb, kale, yummy blueberries, more lettuce, raspberries, nasturtium flowers because you can eat them, figs, cucumbers, cabbage, and more lettuce. And if you've been wondering what these strange plants are in my conservatory, they're loofahs. They're not for eating. They're those sponges that you can scrub your back with. I grew them just for fun. So this year I haven't had to buy many vegetables from the supermarket at all for the first time ever. And it's been really fun. You know, some things haven't really done very well this year, like this quinoa that I planted. It really isn't thriving, and I don't think it's going to give me much food. But it's made me really appreciate the effort that goes into growing our food by farmers all over the country. You've probably picked up that I absolutely love gardening, but it's so exciting. I planted one sunflower and you get hundreds of seeds. Look at all those seeds. The more you plant, the more you get. In fact, it reminds me of that first book in the Bible that we've been thinking about, Genesis. And it talks a lot about gardens and gardening in the book of Genesis, and I love that the first job that humanity ever really had was planting food for themselves to eat, doing a bit of gardening or a bit of farming. We've talked before about what it means to be made in the image of God and how special that is. But today I want to talk a little bit about the responsibility that it gives us too. In Genesis chapter 1 it says, "I am putting you in charge of the fish, the birds and all the wild animals. I have provided all kinds of grain and all kinds of fruit for you to eat." So God gave human beings the joy of looking after the earth, caring for it, and eating and enjoying all the good things that come from it. Sadly, sometimes in human history, people have acted as if this means that we can treat the earth in any way we want, and people and the earth have suffered for it. I wonder if you can think of any ways in which we as human beings have treated the earth badly. Over many years, human beings have become pretty good at farming the land and are always coming up with new ways and methods of doing things well. One thing I've learnt is that if you keep planting the same thing in the same spot every year, it stops growing well. This is because different plants need different nutrients from the soil, and so if you keep planting the same thing in that spot, it uses up all those particular nutrients. So it's better to move things around. Maybe that's what happened to my quinoa this year. It's called crop rotation when you plant different things in different patches each year, and it's something that farmers do. I want to tell you about an environmentalist and scientist of the early 20th century who was very influential in the realm of crop rotation. His name was George Washington Carver. George was born into slavery in the United States, but when slavery was abolished, his owner, Moses Carver, and his wife, Susan, raised George and his brother James as their own children. They encouraged George in his education. At that time, education was very limited, and George had to walk 10 miles to find a school that would take him. So just think of that when you complain about your walk to school. George said, "Education is the key to unlock the golden door of freedom." George developed techniques to improve soil in fields which had repeatedly had cotton planted in them. Together with other agricultural experts, he urged farmers to alternate cotton crops with planting things like peanuts and sweet potatoes. This was a really good idea as it made the soil better and produced good and healthy things for people to eat. He also encouraged people to eat better by widely distributing recipes using the alternative crops. He came up with hundreds of recipes and uses for peanuts. George didn't make lots of money from his inventions. He said, "It's not the style of clothes one wears, neither the kind of automobile or car one drives, nor the amount of money one has in the bank that counts. These mean nothing. It is simply service that measures success." I've got a little bee here that's buzzing around, distracting me as I'm trying to make this assembly, and he's quite cute though, and I tell you what, he's doing a really good job of pollinating these flowers and buzzing around to make more flowers and more vegetables for me, so we'll let him carry on with his work. George Washington Carver believed that faith in God and finding out about his world and how to look after it went hand in hand. He said on many occasions that his faith in Jesus was his motivation for discovering how to look after the environment whilst enjoying its rewards. What I found really fascinating was that when he became a professor in a university, he was just as concerned with his students developing good characters as he was with them learning science. Here are a few of the things he taught his students. Neither look up to the rich nor down on the poor. Be too brave to lie. Take your share of the world and let others take theirs. We mentioned before that as human beings, we haven't always been very good at looking after our earth. In fact, during the COVID-19 lockdowns, there was a lot of talk about giving the earth a rest from pollution and a chance to heal. I noticed birds singing that I'd never noticed before, and everything looked so clean and fresh. We've been looking a lot in these assemblies at the first book of the Bible, Genesis, but I want to quickly skip to the last book of the Bible, Revelation. In there, it says that one day Jesus will return and there will be a new heaven and a new earth. In other words, all the things that have gone wrong because of humanity's greed will finally be rescued and put to rights. Now that is something to look forward to. Harvest time is traditionally a time when Christians give thanks to God for the good things He gives us, and we remember that we shouldn't take for granted having enough food to eat. It's a time when we remember that some people in the world don't have enough to eat, and to think about what we can do to help. It's also a time to remember the people who work hard to provide food for us. Farmers are totally dependent on the weather, and it can sometimes be a stressful type of work when you have to rely on the sun and the rain at just the right times. Jesus taught His disciples to ask for whatever they need. In the prayer He taught them, which we know as the Lord's Prayer, it says, "Give us this day our daily bread." In other words, it's good to ask Him for our daily needs and remember to thank Him for His provision. In many supermarkets these days, there are collections of food banks so that people who have more than enough can give to those who don't have enough. Now that is a really good idea. Let's thank God now together, shall we? Lord, thank You for the beautiful world that we live in and that we get to enjoy so many wonderful types of food from it. Help us to be mindful of those who do not have enough in our community and around the world, and to do what we can to help. Thank You for the farmers who work hard to provide food for the supermarkets, and thank You for people in history like George Washington Carver and other scientists who have helped us look after the world and look after each other. Amen. Discussion question time. Can you think of any small ways in which you can look after the world or share with other people? Can you think of any ways which damage the world, and what can we do about it? And finally, do you know any farmers? Perhaps the parents of some people in your class are farmers. Why don't you say thank you to them today? Maybe you could write a card to tell them that you're grateful for the work that they do. Bye-bye.